Hey everybody, welcome to my humble abode. I'm Anthony Monteith. This is Cup of Chi. I thought I'd come on here and do just my own short commentary on where I've been and what I've been doing. As you know, the last uh, podcast I did was with Dr. Ortwin Lewis, who's coming here to Ireland in April to give a seminar. And we're really looking forward to hosting him. It's the first time this kind of work has been exposed in the West in the way that he's teaching it. So he's been traveling a lot. He's been teaching in his own country in Germany, Switzerland, Bali, Malaysia. So yeah, we're looking forward to that. I myself have been promising for some time to deliver the China Universe Qigong system. And this is a system that I learned some time ago in China when I was traveling with students of mine. And I was seeking something to help me with long-standing health issues that I'd had for a while. Namely, I was suffering actually with really bad migraines. They were quite debilitating at a constant low level all the time. So I'd wake up in the mornings and I'd be feeling sick, nauseated, tired, struggle to eat, struggle to kind of operate. And I would push myself through the day, carry on treating clients, carry on doing what I was doing. But these headaches wouldn't go away. So I went to China. I met a chap over there who was a foreign student studying in China, and he introduced me to Master Wang. Master Wang Chen Jiang. He was, I'm going to say, in his 80s at the time, 84. So we're going fast forward now, quite some years later, um, and he lived pretty much a solitary life in his own apartment and had foreign students come and visit him and train with him. He was, it seemed to be a very prominent teacher in the 90s in Hangzhou, on the park in the West Lake, and it looked like he'd garnered a lot of attention through the media. He'd been involved as a young man as a writer and editor of magazines and things like that. So he was a fairly ordinary working guy um, who came across qigong in his 40s, but in the depth that he was at, but had always had an interest from a very young age. From a very young age, so he went on to study this one particular system, which he then learnt over time to condense down into a usable format. This is quite a common theme in China and a lot of the systems that I've studied. For example, with Yan Shao Gong, which is the system that Master Yap Po Hyung promotes and teaches. It's a system that his father and his father's teacher condensed down into a usable system. So I think this is the reason why this happens, I think, is in line with how we live our life, how busy we get with our lives, and therefore being able to condense it down makes it more approachable, more usable, more flexible. Now, I know there are people within this community that maybe not listen to this podcast, but maybe are aware of it, and they would heavily criticize anything, any kind of watering down of anything. But the truth is, when you're trying to grow the art, you have to make it accessible to the general public. Not all of the general public are going to go to the depth that you wish them to go to. But I think, you know, something is better than nothing at all. If we look at the way yoga has gone, it's gone off in many, many different branches and directions from its origin source. Some would argue good, some would argue bad. I think that's not not my area of expertise to comment on, but I do see that that has happened. Um, I believe in the majority of the cases for general health and fitness and wellness and flexibility and strength, I think it's a good thing. For the more spiritual, more aligned, more puritanical or more purists of yoga, it's probably not a great thing because you're losing the essence. And therefore, a lot of people would argue with me that by doing these practices, you're losing the essence. And I understand that. And there's a huge element of people that would argue that without lineage or nothing. And I get that too. I understand that. It's about honoring that lineage, it's about being thankful for what you've been given. I think there's an emergence of very talented internal arts practitioners that have reached probably levels that are far beyond some of their Eastern counterparts. But now that unfortunately what's happening is their ego is starting to take over and they're starting to use this as a kind of sound point to say, "Oh, look at us! Look at how much further we've along than the people that created it." But we could argue the same about sports. There are so many other countries that are better at rugby and football than the Western cultures that maybe propagated it. So, not a great example, perhaps, but I think you know what I'm saying. Um, So, having received it and having benefited from it, it's good to honor it, even if you do go on to adapt it, modify it, perhaps see that it needs to be changed. And that's just the normal act of progression. I think what is super exciting is the awareness of Qigong, Neigong, Daoyin, all these styles is becoming more and more apparent. And for me, this is an exciting time. I feel that perhaps people have maybe done yoga and Pilates a lot. Maybe they've tried breath work. They're now doing these kind of ice baths, breath work, um, all these things. And they're still searching and still looking for something else. And I think in some cases, Qigong, Neigong, Daoyin, whatever you want to call it, is helping to bridge the gap. And of course, that is very much dependent on the teacher, the style, what your approach is, what the purpose of the studying is for. Myself, my study has been very eclectic. My first introduction to anything like the internal arts came from martial arts when I was a young man, 15, and watching senior practitioners do breath work and holding the breath and hold funny positions and move the hands in strange ways, wondering what the heck this was about. But then when actually going to do it, found how difficult it was, despite being at that time extremely fit and strong, much more so than I ever was from an external perspective. And then progressing on to the world of healing and being very much more focused on the sensitivity of energy, chi, prana, mana, life force, whatever you want to call it, and being aware of how other people, uh, shall we say, carry that energy or project that energy or receive or give or whatever it is, and how to ground myself from an energetic perspective. Um, And then I just felt this calling. I got to a point in my career as working in Chinese medicine and general healing that there was something missing for me. And going back into more in depth into the Qigong and the Neigong seemed the most logical thing. It kept calling to me. I approached it from a very much from an inner alchemy perspective, from an elemental perspective, based obviously on some of the Oriental East Asian medicine traditions. But I was lucky enough to have instructors that were explorative, that were creative, that had found ways to go beyond the normal interpretation of the standard work, of the standard textbooks, of the standard approaches. And that created a freedom of expression within the work. And then I suppose for many years it was just all very much rooted and grounded in the basics, standing, moving, breathing, clearing, centering. And then with the recent events that occurred globally, I felt a need to kind of reach out and maybe reconnect with Asia, and find what else is out there. And that just gave me a new perspective, a new understanding of my own practice that I could semi-reverse engineer. It also gives you hope and inspiration for the future that, there is enough Western practitioners out there to keep this whole thing alive and moving and well. Um, and so what I hope to do in the future is start to release my perspectives on what I've learned and what I've interpreted from direct one-on-one teachings, in other words, learnings with my teachers, um, from work that was given to me and reinterpreted, and then things that I've learned from traveling to China and back. So my Chinese is very poor. Um, I don't claim to speak it in any way. So a lot of my interpretation of the work was done through other interpreters, and then through working with it for many years, more than 15, 16 years with some of the work I was given, is then reinterpreting it and then finding common links with other systems that I learned, and being shown what the internal mechanisms are of that particular Neigong or Qigong, and that there's a common thread. Obviously, there are other internal styles that have a completely different approach, that look at Qi in a completely different model, and that's fine too. I always recommend to anyone learning Qigong and Neigong is to follow your heart, follow the thing that resonates with you, that feels right with you. It will always evolve and change. And like with anything, sometimes a teacher changes and the way that they teach changes, maybe the structure of the classes or their organization changes, and then you just feel naturally it's time for you to move on. And that's kind of just a normal part of the Tao, the way, the flow, the movement. There are some students that are very much rooted in tradition, and they will stick with a teacher till the end, to the very end, and that's very honourable, and I think it's very important, because uh, it's really hard to master something if you're trying to juggle 20 things at once. So it's always important to have somebody who's mastered what they're doing, because they provide a guiding light and inspiration for the internal work. Um, you know, for me, I recognize within myself that I've studied many systems for a reason, but it's more as a teacher, I just try to shed light and try to uncover some truths. I have witnessed and felt some incredible power and energy of people, which I can't describe and put into any kind of quantifiable terms. I don't know why that is. Um, I think we still have to maybe examine the way we interact with our environment on an energetic level. I think we haven't reached that yet with Western science. Um, from a point of view of martial arts, I do think that there's an awful lot of internal practitioners that think they can do these incredible things to everybody, and that's not true. There are some people out there that are super grounded naturally, are super strong internally already. That's just part of their makeup. And it'd be foolish to think that because you have some really interesting skills that it applies across the broad range of humans. It doesn't. And then there are also people out there that are extremely powerful and strong at external styles that could, you know, create some absolutely devastating defense or attack to another human being, and then are suddenly completely blown away when somebody who appears to be far meeker and far less substantially physical devastates them, in a very easy fashion. So there are always these swings between the two, and variations and combinations, and some people have mastered both external and internal, and blah 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 blah, whatever. That's all part of it. It's all part of the beautiful dynamic soup. For me, my emphasis is on helping people understand themselves, helping them find a new way to calm down their body and their mind, and a new way to connect with themselves that isn't just through, um, you know, reading a book or going for a walk, which is all fantastic, but finding that deeper connection internally and giving them a guiding point to get that, to feel it, to sense it, to notice it. And there are some students that are just can't do it. They just can't feel or sense or judge any type of energy for whatever reason. And I just say to them, you just have to trust the process. It's not uh, it's not anything bad or good. It's just where you're at. Um, I think it's helped quite a few people that I've known and trained with and worked with, and I've helped them overcome some mental and emotional challenges as well as some physical pain challenges, including myself within that, and help them get a new perspective on themselves as a human being, and um, help them to live a life that is a little bit more perhaps connected with themselves, but also connected with something bigger than themselves, whatever you want to call that, the Tao, the way, God, whatever. It's that universal life force that perhaps is what we're all part of, that we're all connected through. Um, I mean, the first film I ever saw as a child was Star Wars, and I never forget as a 5-year-old thinking, perhaps there is more to this atmosphere that surrounds us, to the way the planet sits in the stars and or sits in the universe and space and whatever you want to call that. Like there has to be something magical about that. I mean, um, it can't just all be explained through science. And I know we're so adamant to do that. We so much want to, but I'm sure we're going to get to a point where it could go both ways, where we're just like completely confused and we have to let go and say, yeah, there is a higher force power, whatever you want to call that, or we go so deep that the answer becomes so simple, and it comes back that in fact we're all just part of a large, organized, computerized or mathematical equation. And I'm sure that if we were to find that, there'll be a huge part of us that would be, wow, is that all it is? Perhaps some disappointment, perhaps some incredulation, and then wondering why we didn't figure it out. So it's like, for me, I err on the magical and the mystical. I think it's a little bit more fun, you know. Um, but it's each to their own. So I'd like to invite you that if you have chance to listen back to some of the Cup of Chi podcasts, I am going to be working on getting some new um, podcast interviewees shortly. I haven't been on this for a while. I have been traveling. I've been away with family. I've been working on starting. I keep promising to start, but working on getting these videos out. And I'm also in a transition period where I'm trying to work out what direction I'm going to go in next with my own training. So thank you for your patience. Thank you for subscribing to the channel, and thank you for listening to the podcast. And I know some of you have been downloading Cup of Chi, and it's a real bonus. It's a very humble podcast, but we have had some great guests on and some pretty amazing people that do amazing things with their lives. And the whole purpose of the Cup of Chi really is to inspire you, is to give you ideas to help you live a more wholesome or more inspired or more nourished life. Thanks for listening. Take care. Please leave a comment. Please do all the usual things that all the YouTubers say, the subscription and all the bells and all the whistles. I'm sure it helps at some point. I'm not really sure how it works or how the algorithm works. I'm completely have no understanding of any of that, but I'm hoping that you're enjoying the content, and watch for the new course coming very, very soon, I do promise. Thank you.